Chapter 1. The Gaslighting Game, How Others Make You Question Reality. Sarah thought she was losing her mind. Every morning, she would place her car keys on the kitchen counter. But somehow, they kept appearing in different places. Her husband would find them in the bedroom, the bathroom, even inside the refrigerator. When she asked him about it, he would look at her with concern and say she was becoming forgetful. After months of this, Sarah started writing down where she put her keys. That was when she discovered the truth. Her husband was moving them on purpose. This is gaslighting, a psychological manipulation tactic so powerful that it can make perfectly sane people question their own reality. The term comes from a 1944 movie where a husband dims the gas lights in their home, then denies it when his wife notices. Today, millions of people experience this mind control technique without even knowing it. Gaslighting is not just lying. It is a systematic pattern of making someone doubt their memory, their perception, and their sanity. The person doing it wants to gain power and control over their victim. They want you to stop trusting yourself and start depending on them for what is real and what is not. The scary part is how common this has become. A recent study found that 74% of Americans have experienced some form of gaslighting in their relationships. But most people cannot identify it when it happens to them. They just know something feels wrong, but they cannot put their finger on what it is. Let me tell you about Mark, a successful lawyer who prided himself on his sharp memory. His girlfriend Emma would tell him about plans they made, then later deny ever making them. When Mark showed up to dinner at a restaurant she suggested, Emma would act confused and say she never wanted to go there. She would claim he misunderstood or made it up. After 6 months, Mark started keeping a journal of their conversations. He realized Emma was rewriting history to make him feel crazy. The gaslighter uses several specific techniques to mess with your mind. The first technique is called reality revision. They will tell you something happened differently than you remember. They might say you never had a conversation that you clearly recall. Or they will claim you said something you never said. They do this with such confidence that you start to doubt your own memory. The second technique is selective memory. The gaslighter will remember every mistake you made, but forget all the good things you did. They will bring up your past errors constantly, but act like your achievements never happened. This makes you feel like you are always wrong and they are always right. The third technique is emotional invalidation. When you express feelings or concerns, they dismiss them as overreacting or being too sensitive. They might say things like you are being dramatic or you are imagining things. This teaches you to stop trusting your emotional responses to situations. The fourth technique is isolation through confusion. By making you question your reality, they make you less likely to talk to others about what is happening. You become afraid that other people will also think you are crazy or unreliable. This keeps you trapped in the relationship and dependent on the gaslighter for validation. Dr. Patricia Evans, who studies emotional abuse, explains that gaslighting works because humans have a natural tendency to trust others, especially people close to us. When someone we care about repeatedly tells us our perception is wrong, our brain starts to adapt. We begin to rely on their version of reality instead of our own. The neuroscience behind gaslighting is fascinating and frightening. When we experience repeated contradictions between our memory and what someone tells us happened, our brain tries to resolve this conflict. The easiest solution is often to assume we were wrong. Over time, this creates new neural pathways that make us naturally doubt ourselves. Here is how to spot gaslighting before it destroys your confidence. First, pay attention to your inner voice. If you constantly feel confused or crazy around someone, that is a red flag. Trust that feeling. Second, keep records. Write down important conversations and events. This gives you proof when someone tries to rewrite history. Third, talk to trusted friends or family members. They can help you reality check situations and remind you that your perceptions are valid. Jennifer learned this lesson the hard way. Her boss would give her instructions, then later deny ever saying them. When projects went wrong because of these mixed messages, Jennifer got blamed. She started recording their meetings on her phone. When she played back the recordings, she realized her boss was deliberately setting her up to fail. This evidence gave her the confidence to report the behavior to human resources. The most dangerous part of gaslighting is how it spreads into every area of your life. Once someone succeeds in making you doubt your memory or judgment in one situation, you start questioning yourself everywhere. You might second-guess your professional decisions, your friendships, even your ability to drive safely or cook properly. There are different types of gaslighters, and each one uses slightly different approaches. The medical gaslighter tells you that your physical symptoms are all in your head. The parental gaslighter rewrites family history to make themselves look better. The workplace gaslighter takes credit for your ideas and makes you think you never had them. The romantic gaslighter makes you feel crazy for having normal relationship concerns. One of the most effective defenses against gaslighting is building what psychologists call reality anchors. These are people, documents, or practices that help you stay grounded in truth. Reality anchors might include a trusted friend who knows your situation, a journal where you record events, or even photos and screenshots that prove what actually happened. Lisa discovered this when her mother started gaslighting her about childhood events. Her mother would claim that Lisa had a happy childhood and deny any problems. But Lisa had old diary entries and photographs that proved otherwise. These reality anchors helped her trust her own memories and stop accepting her mother's version of the past. The recovery from gaslighting takes time, but it is completely possible. The first step is recognizing that it happened to you. Many people feel ashamed or embarrassed that they fell for these tactics. But gaslighting is designed to be invisible and confusing. Even smart, educated people can become victims because the manipulation is so subtle and gradual. The second step is rebuilding trust in yourself. Start with small decisions and notice when your instincts are correct. Keep a daily journal of events and how you felt about them. This helps you reconnect with your inner voice and learn to trust your perceptions again. The third step is setting boundaries with people who try to manipulate your reality. This might mean limiting contact with toxic family members, changing jobs, or ending romantic relationships. Remember that your mental health and sense of reality are more important than keeping peace with manipulative people. Technology has made gaslighting easier but also created new ways to protect yourself. Text messages and emails provide written proof of conversations. Voice memos can capture verbal agreements. Security cameras can record what actually happened in your home or workplace. Use these tools to document your reality when dealing with potential gaslighters. If you recognize these patterns in your life, know that you are not alone and you are not crazy. Millions of people have experienced gaslighting and recovered from it. The fact that you are watching this video and learning about these tactics shows that you are already taking the first step toward protecting yourself. In our next chapter, we will explore another dark psychology tactic called love bombing. This is how manipulators use intense affection and attention to gain control over their victims. You will learn why overwhelming romance can actually be a warning sign and how to tell the difference between genuine love and calculated manipulation. Chapter 2: The Love Bombing Strategy: Why Intense Affection is a Warning Sign. Rachel met David on a dating app, and within hours, her phone was buzzing with messages. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen," he wrote. "I think I am falling in love with you already." By day 3, he was sending flowers to her workplace. By week 2, he was talking about marriage and their future together. Rachel felt like she was living in a fairy tale. 6 months later, she realized she was trapped in a nightmare. This is love bombing, a manipulation tactic that uses overwhelming displays of affection to gain control over someone. The person doing it showers their target with excessive attention, gifts, compliments, and promises of the future. It feels amazing at first, but it is actually one of the most dangerous forms of psychological manipulation. Love bombing works because it exploits our deepest human needs for love, attention, and connection. When someone gives us intense focus and affection, our brain releases powerful chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin. These chemicals create feelings of euphoria and attachment. The love bomber knows this and uses it to create an addiction to their attention. Dr. Dale Archer, a psychiatrist who studies narcissistic behavior, explains that love bombing is like giving someone a drug. The victim gets high from all the attention and affection. But just like with drugs, the love bomber controls the supply. They can increase it to reward good behavior or take it away to punish the victim. This creates a cycle of dependency that is very hard to break. The difference between genuine love and love bombing is the speed and intensity. Real love grows gradually as two people get to know each other. Love bombing happens immediately and feels too good to be true. The love bomber claims to love you before they even know your favorite color or your biggest fears. They are in love with the idea of controlling you, not with who you actually are. Let me tell you about Marcus, a a college student who met a woman named Stephanie at a coffee shop. Within an hour of getting her number, Stephanie was texting him constantly. She called him her soulmate and said she had never felt this way about anyone. She bought him expensive gifts and wanted to spend every moment together. Marcus felt special and chosen. But when he tried to maintain his friendships and hobbies, Stephanie became angry and withdrawn. She would say things like, "I guess I love you more than you love me," and threatened to leave. Marcus found himself giving up everything to keep her happy. Love bombers follow a predictable pattern. Phase 1 is the idealization phase. This is when they put you on a pedestal and treat you like you are perfect. They might say you are their soulmate, their missing piece, or the answer to all their problems. They will mirror your interests and values, making you feel like you have found your perfect match. They want to move the relationship forward quickly, often talking about marriage, moving in together, or having children within weeks of meeting. Phase 2 is the devaluation phase. Once the love bomber feels they have secured your attachment, they start to withdraw their affection. They might become critical, distant, or cruel. They will find fault with things they used to praise. This sudden change is shocking and painful, especially after experiencing such intense love. The victim usually tries harder to win back the love bomber's approval, not realizing this is exactly what the manipulator wanted. Phase 3 is the discard phase. The love bomber either abandons the relationship entirely or keeps the victim in a cycle of breaking up and getting back together. Each time they return, they promise things will be different, but the pattern always repeats. This cycle can go on for years, with the victim constantly hoping to get back to the beautiful beginning they experienced during the love bombing phase. The psychology behind love bombing is complex but predictable. Love bombers often have narcissistic personality traits or other personality disorders. They see other people as objects to be used rather than as individuals with their own needs and feelings. They love bomb because it gives them a sense of power and control. Watching someone become addicted to their attention feeds their ego and makes them feel superior. Amy learned about love bombing after escaping a toxic relationship with her coworker Brian. Brian had started by leaving little gifts on her desk and writing her long emails about how amazing she was. He would show up at her apartment unannounced with expensive dinners and talk about their future together. Within a month, he was pressuring her to quit her job and move in with him. When Amy hesitated, Brian became cold and manipulative. He would say things like, "I thought you loved me, and maybe I was wrong about us." Amy realized she was changing everything about her life to keep Brian happy, and that scared her enough to end the relationship. One of the most dangerous aspects of love bombing is how it affects your decision-making ability. The intense emotions and constant attention make it hard to think clearly about the relationship. Your friends and family might express concerns, but you dismiss them because you feel like they do not understand your special connection. The love bomber often encourages this isolation by saying things like, "No one will ever love you like I do," or "Other people are just jealous of what we have." There are several red flags that can help you identify love bombing before it is too late. First, be suspicious of anyone who claims to love you very quickly. Real love takes time to develop. Second, watch for excessive gift giving or grand gestures early in the relationship. While gifts can be nice, love bombing gifts feel overwhelming and come with strings attached. Third, pay attention to how they react when you set boundaries or say no to something. Love bombers cannot handle rejection and will often become angry or manipulative. Another warning sign is when someone wants to spend all their time with you immediately. Healthy relationships allow space for friends, family, and personal interests. Love bombers want to monopolize your time and attention from the very beginning. They might say things like, "I just want to be with you all the time," or "Why do you need other friends when you have me?" Social media has made love bombing easier and more common. Love bombers can research their targets online and craft the perfect personality to attract them. They can send constant messages, post romantic photos, and create a public image of the perfect relationship. But this digital love bombing often feels performative and over the top. Pay attention to whether someone's online expressions of love feel genuine or like they are trying to prove something to the world. The trauma from love bombing can last long after the relationship ends. Victims often struggle with trust issues and have difficulty recognizing genuine love. They might find healthy relationships boring compared to the intense highs and lows they experienced during love bombing. Recovery involves learning to appreciate steady, consistent love instead of dramatic emotional swings. If you think you are being love-bombed, the most important thing is to slow down the relationship. Take time apart to think clearly about what is happening. Talk to trusted friends or family members about your concerns. Keep a journal of your partner's behavior and your feelings. This can help you see patterns that might not be obvious when you are caught up in the emotional intensity. Setting boundaries is crucial when dealing with love bombing. You might say something like, "I need to take things slower," or "I want to maintain my friendships and hobbies." A healthy partner will respect these boundaries. A love bomber will push back, argue, or try to make you feel guilty for having needs. Remember that love bombing is not real love. It is a manipulation tactic designed to control you. Real love is patient, respectful, and grows naturally over time. Real love does not require you to give up your friends, your interests, or your sense of self. Real love makes you feel safe and supported, not anxious and dependent. In our next chapter, we will explore the silent treatment, another powerful psychological weapon that manipulators use to control their victims. You will learn why silence can be more damaging than yelling and how to protect yourself from this form of emotional abuse. Chapter 3: The Silent Treatment Weapon: How Silence Becomes Psychological Torture. Michael thought he was going crazy. For 3 days, his wife Janet had not spoken a single word to him. She would walk past him as if he did not exist. She answered their children but acted like Michael was invisible. When he tried to ask what was wrong, she would leave the room. The silence was so thick it felt like it was suffocating him. He found himself apologizing for things he was not even sure he had done, just to make her talk to him again. This is the silent treatment, a form of emotional abuse that uses silence as a weapon to punish, control, and manipulate another person. It is one of the most psychologically damaging forms of manipulation because it attacks our basic human need for connection and communication. The person giving the silent treatment knows exactly how much pain they are causing, and they use that pain to get what they want. The silent treatment is different from taking space to cool down during an argument. Healthy people might say, "I need some time to think about this," and then return to discuss the issue. The silent treatment has no end date and no explanation. The victim is left guessing what they did wrong and how to fix it. This uncertainty creates intense anxiety and desperation. Psychologist Dr. Kipling Williams has studied the effects of being ignored and excluded. His research shows that the silent treatment activates the same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. When someone gives you the silent treatment, your brain experiences it as a form of physical assault. This is why being ignored can hurt so much more than being yelled at or criticized directly. The silent treatment works because humans are social animals. We need connection and communication to survive and thrive. When someone cuts off communication, it triggers our deepest fears of abandonment and rejection. Our brain interprets this silence as a threat to our survival, which is why it creates such intense emotional pain. Let me tell you about Sarah, a successful marketing executive whose husband Tom used the silent treatment whenever he was unhappy. If Sarah worked late, came home to silence, if she spent time with friends, Tom would not speak to her for days. If she forgot to do something around the house, he would act like she did not exist. Sarah found herself walking on eggshells, constantly trying to anticipate what might trigger his silence. She started turning down work opportunities and canceling plans with friends, just to avoid the psychological torture of being ignored. There are different types of silent treatment, and each one serves a specific purpose for the manipulator. Punitive silence is used to punish someone for doing something the manipulator does not like. The message is clear: if you displease me, I will withdraw my attention and affection. This creates fear and compliance in the victim. Controlling silence is used to force someone to do what the manipulator wants. They will remain silent until their victim gives in to their demands. This might mean apologizing for something they did not do, changing their behavior, or giving up something important to them. Manipulative silence is used to avoid taking responsibility for their own actions. When confronted about their behavior, the manipulator goes silent instead of addressing the issue. This forces the victim to drop the subject and often leads them to apologize for bringing it up in the first place. The psychological effects of the silent treatment are severe and long-lasting. Victims often experience anxiety, depression, and a condition called learned helplessness. They start to believe that they have no control over their situation and stop trying to defend themselves. The constant fear of triggering more silence makes them hypervigilant and exhausted. Dr. John Gottman, who studies relationships, found that the silent treatment is one of the strongest predictors of relationship failure. Couples who use stonewalling and withdrawal as conflict resolution strategies have much higher divorce rates than couples who argue openly. This is because the silent treatment shuts down all possibility of communication and problem solving. Children who experience the silent treatment from parents suffer particularly severe damage. Their developing brains interpret parental silence as abandonment, which can affect their ability to form healthy relationships later in life. Adult children of parents who use the silent treatment often struggle with anxiety, depression, and difficulty trusting others. The silent treatment is often combined with other manipulation tactics to increase its effectiveness. The manipulator might use body language to show their displeasure, like rolling their eyes, sighing heavily, or making facial expressions of disgust. They might also engage in passive-aggressive behaviors like slamming doors, making noise, or doing things that inconvenience their victim. Technology has given manipulators new ways to implement the silent treatment. They might read your text messages but not respond, leave your phone calls unanswered, or block you on social media. Digital silent treatment can be even more painful because you can see evidence that they are active online but choosing to ignore you specifically. Jennifer experienced this when her boyfriend Alex would read her texts but not respond for hours or days. She could see that he was posting on social media and responding to other people, but he would leave her messages on read. This digital silence made her feel desperate and anxious, constantly checking her phone and wondering what she had done wrong. One of the most confusing aspects of the silent treatment is how the manipulator often acts normal around other people. They might be friendly and talkative with friends, family, or coworkers while completely ignoring their victim. This makes the victim feel like they are the problem and that they must have done something terrible to deserve such treatment. The silent treatment is particularly effective against people who are sensitive, caring, or have a strong need for harmony in relationships. These people will go to great lengths to restore communication and connection. They might apologize repeatedly, change their behavior, or give in to unreasonable demands just to end the silence. Here is how to protect yourself from the silent treatment. First, recognize that it is a form of abuse, not a normal way to handle conflict. Healthy people do not punish others with silence. Second, do not chase after someone who is giving you the silent treatment. This only reinforces their behavior and shows them that their manipulation is working. Third, set clear boundaries about communication in your relationships. You can say something like, "I am willing to discuss this issue when you are ready to talk, but I will not accept being ignored as punishment." Then follow through by not engaging with the silent treatment. Fourth, maintain your own emotional stability. Do not let someone else's refusal to communicate ruin your day or make you feel worthless. Continue with your normal activities and relationships. The person giving you the silent treatment wants you to be miserable and desperate. Do not give them that satisfaction. If you are in a relationship with someone who regularly uses the silent treatment, consider whether this is a healthy dynamic you want to continue. Chronic use of the silent treatment is a form of emotional abuse that can cause serious psychological damage over time. You deserve to be in relationships where conflicts are handled with respect and open communication. The recovery from experiencing the silent treatment involves rebuilding your sense of self-worth and learning to trust your own perceptions. Many victims start to believe that they are too sensitive or that they deserve to be ignored. Working with a therapist or counselor can help you process these experiences and develop healthier relationship patterns. Remember that the silent treatment says everything about the person giving it and nothing about you. People who use silence as a weapon are showing you that they lack the emotional maturity and communication skills to handle conflict in a healthy way. You are not responsible for fixing their behavior or earning their communication. In our next chapter, we will explore triangulation, a manipulation tactic where the abuser brings other people into your relationship to create jealousy, confusion, and competition. You will learn how manipulators use third parties to maintain control and how to recognize when you are being triangulated. Chapter 4: The Triangulation Trap, Why They Bring Others into Your Relationship. Lisa felt like she was competing for her own boyfriend. Every conversation with Jake somehow included mentions of his ex-girlfriend Emma. "Emma used to love when I did this," he would say. "Emma never complained about my friends like you do." When Lisa expressed discomfort, Jake would dismiss her feelings and say she was being insecure. But then he would text Emma right in front of Lisa and share private details about their relationship. Lisa found herself constantly trying to prove she was better than Emma, not realizing she was trapped in a psychological game designed to keep her off balance. This is triangulation, a manipulation tactic where someone brings a third person into a two-person relationship to create drama, jealousy, and control. The triangulator uses other people as weapons to make their victim feel insecure, jealous, and desperate for their attention. It is one of the most effective ways to maintain power in a relationship because it keeps the victim focused on competing instead of questioning the manipulator's behavior. Triangulation works by exploiting our natural tendency toward jealousy and competition. When we feel threatened by another person's place in our partner's life, our brain activates stress responses designed to help us fight for our relationship. The manipulator knows this and deliberately creates situations that trigger these responses. They want you to feel like you are constantly fighting to keep them interested in you. Dr. Stephen Karpman, who developed the drama triangle theory, explains that triangulation creates three roles: the persecutor, the victim, and the rescuer. The manipulator moves between these roles to keep their target confused and reactive. Sometimes they present themselves as the victim being fought over. Sometimes they act like the rescuer, saving you from your own insecurity. But their true role is always the persecutor, using psychological manipulation to maintain control. The most common form of triangulation involves romantic relationships. The manipulator will maintain inappropriate contact with ex-partners, flirt with others in front of their victim, or constantly compare their current partner to previous relationships. They might say things like, "My ex would never act like this," or "I have never had these problems with anyone else." This makes the victim feel like they are failing in the relationship and need to work harder to measure up. Let me tell you about David, whose wife Monica constantly triangulated him with her male coworkers. Monica would come home from work talking about how funny and smart her colleague Brad was. She would text Brad during dinner and laugh at his messages. When David expressed concern, Monica would accuse him of being controlling and jealous. She would say things like, "Brad trusts his girlfriend and maybe I should find someone who is not so insecure." David found himself constantly trying to prove he was not jealous while feeling more and more uncomfortable with the situation. Family triangulation is another common form of this manipulation. A parent might pit their children against each other by playing favorites or sharing inappropriate information. They might tell one child about the other's mistakes or create competition for their love and attention. This damages the relationship between the siblings while keeping the parent in a position of power and control. Workplace triangulation happens when a boss or coworker brings personal drama into professional relationships. They might share confidential information about one employee with another, create unnecessary competition between team members, or use office gossip to manipulate workplace dynamics. This creates a toxic environment where people feel like they cannot trust each other. The psychological effects of triangulation are severe and long-lasting. Victims often develop chronic anxiety about their relationships and struggle with self-esteem issues. They become hypervigilant about potential threats and may develop jealousy problems that extend to healthy relationships. The constant competition and comparison makes them feel like they are never good enough. Social media has made triangulation easier and more public than ever before. Manipulators can like and comment on other people's photos in ways designed to make their partner jealous. They can maintain inappropriate online relationships and claim they are just being friendly. They can share details about their relationship online while simultaneously flirting with others, creating confusion and drama for their victim. Jennifer experienced this when her boyfriend Mark would constantly like and comment on his ex-girlfriend's bikini photos on Instagram. When Jennifer mentioned it bothered her, Mark would say she was being insecure and controlling. But then he would make sure to do it even more, often while sitting right next to Jennifer. He was using social media as a weapon to keep her feeling threatened and insecure in their relationship. One of the most insidious aspects of triangulation is how it makes the victim question their own reactions. The manipulator will often gaslight their victim by saying they are being paranoid, jealous, or controlling when they express concern about the third party. This makes the victim feel like their natural protective instincts are character flaws that need to be overcome. Triangulators choose their third parties carefully. They often select people who pose a real or perceived threat to their victim. This might be an ex-partner, a coworker, a friend, or even a family member. The key is that the third party represents something the victim fears losing their partner to. The manipulator will emphasize the positive qualities of this person while criticizing their victim. The triangulator also uses what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement to keep their victim hooked. Sometimes they will reassure their victim and downplay the importance of the third party. Other times they will emphasize their connection with this person and make their victim feel threatened. This unpredictable pattern creates an addictive cycle where the victim becomes desperate for the reassurance and validation. Here is how to recognize when you are being triangulated. First, pay attention to how often your partner mentions other people, especially in ways that make you feel uncomfortable or insecure. Second, notice if they share private information about your relationship with others or if they seem to enjoy making you jealous. Third, observe whether they dismiss your concerns about their relationships with other people. Fourth, watch for patterns where they compare you unfavorably to others or suggest that other people would handle situations better than you do. Fifth, notice if they maintain inappropriate contact with ex-partners or seem to cultivate relationships that make you feel threatened. If you recognize these patterns, the first step is to trust your instincts. Your feelings of discomfort are valid and should not be dismissed as insecurity or jealousy. Healthy partners do not deliberately make their loved ones feel threatened or insecure. They work to reassure and protect their relationship, not create drama and competition. Setting boundaries is crucial when dealing with triangulation. You can say something like, "I am not comfortable with how close you are to this person," or "I need you to stop comparing me to your ex." A healthy partner will listen to your concerns and work to address them. A manipulator will dismiss your feelings and continue the behavior. Do not engage in the competition the triangulator is trying to create. Refusing to fight for someone's attention or trying to prove you are better than the third party only reinforces their manipulation. Instead, focus on whether this person is treating you with the respect and consideration you deserve. Remember that triangulation is about control, not love. Someone who truly loves you will not deliberately make you feel insecure or threatened. They will not use other people as weapons against you or create unnecessary drama in your relationship. You deserve to be with someone who makes you feel secure and valued, not someone who keeps you guessing and competing. In our next chapter, we will explore future faking, a manipulation tactic where someone makes promises about the future they have no intention of keeping. You will learn how manipulators use false hope to keep their victims trapped and how to tell the difference between genuine plans and empty promises. Chapter 5: The Future Faking Technique, How False Promises Keep You Hooked. Amanda had been planning her wedding for 3 years. Her fiancé Robert talked constantly about their future together. He described the house they would buy, the children they would have, and the trips they would take. He even picked out names for their future kids and showed her pictures of houses he wanted to purchase. But every time Amanda tried to set an actual wedding date, Robert would find an excuse to postpone. First, he needed to finish school, then he needed to get a better job. Then his family was going through problems. After 3 years of waiting, Amanda realized that Robert had no intention of ever marrying her. He was using false promises to keep her invested in a relationship that was never going anywhere. This is future faking, a manipulation tactic where someone makes elaborate promises about the future to keep their victim invested in the relationship. The future faker paints beautiful pictures of what life will be like together, but these promises are never meant to be kept. They are psychological tools designed to create hope, attachment, and dependency in their victim. Future faking works because humans are naturally oriented toward the future. We make decisions today based on what we hope will happen tomorrow. When someone offers us an appealing vision of the future, our brain starts planning and preparing for that reality. We become emotionally invested in outcomes that may never actually occur. The psychology behind future faking is complex and deliberate. Future fakers understand that people will tolerate present discomfort if they believe it will lead to future happiness. They use this knowledge to keep their victims trapped in unsatisfying relationships by constantly dangling the promise of better things to come. Dr. Ramani Durvasula, who studies narcissistic behavior, explains that future faking serves multiple purposes for manipulators. It creates a trauma bond with their victim, makes them feel special and chosen, and provides an excuse for why the relationship is not working well in the present. The victim stays because they believe the problems are temporary and will be resolved once the promised future arrives. Let me tell you about Marcus, whose girlfriend Jessica constantly talked about moving in together. Jessica would show him apartments online, discuss how they would decorate, and make plans for their shared life. But whenever Marcus brought up actually signing a lease, Jessica would create drama or find reasons to delay. She was going through a stressful time at work. Her family needed her help. She was not ready to make such a big commitment. Marcus spent 2 years paying for dates and supporting Jessica emotionally while waiting for their future to begin. Future faking comes in many different forms. Romantic future faking involves promises of marriage, children, or shared living arrangements that never materialize. The manipulator might talk about dream weddings, perfect family life, or growing old together. They create detailed fantasies that feel real and achievable, but they have no intention of following through. Career future faking happens in workplace relationships where someone promises promotions, raises, or better opportunities that never come. A boss might string along an employee with promises of advancement while never actually providing it. Business partners might promise future profits or opportunities to keep someone working for free or below market value. Family future faking occurs when parents or relatives make promises they never intend to keep. They might promise financial support, inheritance, or help with major life decisions. These promises keep family members compliant and hopeful while the manipulator maintains control over family dynamics. Financial future faking involves promises about money, investments, or business opportunities. The manipulator might promise to pay back loans, share profits from ventures, or provide financial security. These promises keep victims financially invested while the manipulator benefits from their money or resources. The most dangerous aspect of future faking is how it keeps victims trapped in cycles of hope and disappointment. Each time the promised future fails to materialize, the manipulator provides new explanations and updated timelines. They might say they need more time, that circumstances have changed, or that external factors are preventing their plans. This keeps the victim believing that the future is still possible if they just wait a little longer. Karen experienced this with her business partner Tom, who promised her a 50% stake in their startup company. Tom constantly talked about their future success and how they would both become wealthy. He showed her business plans, discussed expansion opportunities, and painted vivid pictures of their shared success. But when it came time to formalize their partnership, Tom always had excuses. The lawyers were busy. The paperwork was not ready. The timing was not right. After 2 years of working for free based on future promises, Karen realized Tom had no intention of sharing ownership with her. Technology has made future faking easier and more convincing. Manipulators can create fake documents, Photoshop images, and use online tools to make their promises seem more real. They might show fake apartment listings for places they plan to rent together, create false business documents, or use social media to reinforce their false narratives about the future. The emotional impact of future faking is severe because it attacks our fundamental need for hope and security. Victims often experience feelings of betrayal, confusion, and self-doubt when they realize the promises were false. They may blame themselves for being naive or wonder how they could have been fooled for so long. One of the most challenging aspects of future faking is that the manipulator often seems to believe their own promises. They can talk about the future with such conviction and detail that it feels completely genuine. This is because many future fakers are not consciously lying. They genuinely feel these emotions and intentions in the moment, but they lack the follow-through or commitment to make them reality. Here is how to identify future faking before it traps you. First, pay attention to the balance between future promises and present actions. Someone who is serious about building a future with you will take concrete steps in the present to make it happen. Future fakers talk constantly about tomorrow but do very little today. Second, notice if someone uses future promises to deflect from present problems. When you bring up issues in your current relationship, does your partner redirect the conversation to how great things will be in the future? This is a red flag that they are using future faking to avoid addressing real concerns. Third, observe whether their promises have realistic timelines and concrete steps. Genuine plans include specific actions, deadlines, and milestones. Future faking involves vague promises with no clear path to achievement. The manipulator might say someday we will or when things settle down without providing specific dates or steps. Fourth, watch for patterns where promised deadlines are repeatedly missed or pushed back. 1 or 2 delays might be legitimate, but chronic postponement is a sign of future faking. Pay attention to the explanations they give for these delays. Are they taking responsibility and providing new concrete plans, or are they blaming external circumstances and making more vague promises? If you suspect someone is future faking with you, start asking for specifics. Request concrete timelines, written agreements, or specific steps they will take to achieve their promises. A genuine person will be happy to provide details and demonstrate their commitment. A future faker will become defensive, vague, or angry when pressed for specifics. Set your own deadlines for important decisions. If someone promises to marry you, move in with you, or enter a business partnership, give them a reasonable timeline to follow through. Communicate this deadline clearly and be prepared to end the relationship if they do not meet it. Remember that your time and emotional investment have value and should not be wasted on false promises. Document the promises that people make to you. Keep records of conversations about future plans, especially if they involve significant commitments like marriage, business partnerships, or financial agreements. This helps you track patterns of promises versus actual follow-through and protects you from gaslighting if the person later denies making these commitments. Trust your instincts if something feels off about someone's future promises. If you find yourself constantly waiting for your life to begin or feeling like you are always one step away from happiness, you might be dealing with a future faker. Healthy relationships involve present satisfaction along with realistic future planning. Remember that actions speak louder than words. Someone who truly wants to build a future with you will demonstrate this through their behavior today. They will make sacrifices, show commitment, and take concrete steps toward shared goals. Future fakers are all talk and no action. The recovery from future faking involves grieving the loss of the future you were promised and learning to focus on present reality instead of potential outcomes. This can be difficult because it means letting go of hopes and dreams that felt real and achievable. Working with a therapist can help you process these feelings and develop healthier ways to evaluate relationships and opportunities. Building resilience against future faking means developing a strong sense of your own worth and timeline. Do not put your life on hold for someone else's promises. Continue pursuing your own goals and building your own future while maintaining realistic expectations about what others can and will provide. In our next chapter, we will explore emotional blackmail, a manipulation tactic where someone uses guilt, fear, and obligation to control your behavior. You will learn how manipulators turn your caring nature against you and how to recognize when your emotions are being weaponized. Chapter 6: The Emotional Blackmail System, How Guilt Becomes Their Control Tool. Every time Jessica tried to spend time with her friends, her mother would develop a mysterious illness. "I guess I will just stay home alone with my chest pains," her mother would say, "do not worrying about me. I am sure the neighbors will check on me if I collapse." Jessica would cancel her plans and rush home, only to find her mother perfectly fine and watching television. When Jessica confronted her about this pattern, her mother would cry and say she could not believe her own daughter thought she was lying about being sick. Jessica felt trapped between living her own life and being labeled a cruel, uncaring daughter. This is emotional blackmail, a manipulation tactic where someone uses guilt, fear, obligation, and shame to control another person's behavior. The emotional blackmailer weaponizes your caring nature against you, making you feel responsible for their emotions and well-being. They create scenarios where saying no to their demands makes you feel like a terrible person. Emotional blackmail works because it exploits our natural desire to be good people who care about others. When someone suggests that our actions will cause them pain, suffering, or harm, our empathy kicks in and we want to protect them. The manipulator knows this and deliberately creates situations where protecting them requires sacrificing your own needs and boundaries. Dr. Susan Forward, who coined the term emotional blackmail, identifies four main tools that manipulators use to control their victims. Fear involves threatening consequences if you do not comply with their demands. Obligation makes you feel like you owe them compliance because of your relationship or what they have done for you. Guilt suggests that your actions are causing them pain or suffering. Shame attacks your character and makes you feel like a bad person for having boundaries or different needs. The emotional blackmailer follows a predictable pattern. First, they make a demand or request that you are not comfortable with. When you hesitate or say no, they escalate to emotional manipulation. They might cry, threaten self-harm, bring up past favors they have done for you, or attack your character. If you give in to stop their emotional display, They reward you with temporary approval and affection. This teaches you that complying with their demands is the only way to maintain peace in the relationship. Let me tell you about David, whose girlfriend Sarah used emotional blackmail whenever he wanted to spend time with his friends. If David made plans for a guy's night out, Sarah would start crying and saying she felt abandoned and unloved. She would bring up times when she had sacrificed for their relationship and question whether David really cared about her. She would say things like, "I guess our relationship is not as important to you as I thought, and maybe I should find someone who actually wants to spend time with me." David would cancel his plans to comfort Sarah, and she would immediately become happy and affectionate again. Family emotional blackmail is particularly damaging because it exploits the deep bonds and obligations we feel toward relatives. Parents might use phrases like, "After everything I have done for you," or "This is how you repay me," to manipulate adult children. They might threaten to disown family members, claim their health is suffering because of your choices, or suggest that you are destroying the family by setting boundaries. Romantic emotional blackmail often involves threats of abandonment or self-harm. The manipulator might say they cannot live without you, threaten to hurt themselves if you leave, or claim that your actions are destroying their mental health. They make you feel responsible for their emotional stability and well-being, which creates an enormous sense of pressure and guilt. Workplace emotional blackmail can involve bosses or coworkers who make you feel guilty for taking time off, setting boundaries, or pursuing other opportunities. They might say things like, "I really need you," or "The team is counting on you," to pressure you into working extra hours or taking on additional responsibilities without compensation. The psychological effects of emotional blackmail are severe and long-lasting. Victims often develop chronic anxiety about disappointing others and struggle with setting healthy boundaries. They become hypervigilant about other people's emotions and may lose touch with their own needs and feelings. The constant guilt and pressure can lead to depression, low self-esteem, and difficulty making decisions. One of the most insidious aspects of emotional blackmail is how it makes victims question their own moral character. The manipulator frames your natural desire for autonomy and boundaries as selfishness or cruelty. They make you feel like wanting basic things like privacy, time with friends, or personal space makes you a bad person who does not care about others. Technology has created new forms of emotional blackmail. Manipulators can send guilt-inducing texts, emails, or social media messages at all hours. They might post cryptic messages about feeling abandoned or unloved, designed to make you feel guilty without directly confronting you. They could also use read receipts and online status indicators to create pressure for immediate responses. Michelle experienced this when her ex-boyfriend started sending her late-night texts about feeling suicidal whenever she went on dates with other people. Even though they had broken up months earlier, he would monitor her social media and send emotional messages designed to make her feel responsible for his mental health. Michelle felt trapped between moving on with her life and feeling like she might be responsible if something happened to him. Here is how to recognize emotional blackmail before it controls your life. First, pay attention to how you feel after interactions with certain people. If you consistently feel guilty, anxious, or responsible for someone else's emotions, you might be dealing with emotional blackmail. Second, notice if someone's emotional responses seem disproportionate to the situation or conveniently timed to your boundary setting. Third, observe whether someone uses their emotions to change your behavior rather than to communicate their genuine feelings. Emotional blackmailers display emotions strategically to get what they want, not to express authentic feelings or work through problems together. Fourth, watch for patterns where someone brings up past favors, sacrifices, or kindnesses to pressure you into current compliance. While gratitude is important in relationships, using past actions as emotional leverage is manipulation. The most important step in dealing with emotional blackmail is recognizing that you are not responsible for other people's emotions. Adults are responsible for managing their own feelings and reactions. You can be empathetic and supportive without sacrificing your own well-being or autonomy. Setting boundaries with emotional blackmailers requires preparation and consistency. Decide in advance what behaviors you will and will not accept. Practice responses like, "I understand you are upset, but I am not responsible for managing your emotions," or "I care about you, but I cannot change my decision based on your emotional reaction." When an emotional blackmailer escalates their behavior, resist the urge to give in just to stop their emotional display. This only teaches them that escalation works and makes the pattern stronger. Instead, remain calm and consistent with your boundaries. You might say something like, "I can see you are very upset. I am going to give you some space to calm down, and we can talk about this later when emotions are not so high." Do not try to logic or reason with someone in the middle of an emotional blackmail episode. They are not interested in problem solving or compromise. They want you to give in to their demands. Save rational discussions for times when they are calm and willing to engage in genuine conversation. If someone threatens self-harm as a form of emotional blackmail, take it seriously but do not take responsibility for preventing it. Contact emergency services or mental health professionals if necessary, but do not change your boundaries or decisions based on these threats. Professional help is the appropriate response to genuine mental health crises, not compliance with manipulative demands. Building resilience against emotional blackmail involves developing a strong sense of your own worth and rights. You have the right to say no, to have boundaries, and to make decisions that prioritize your own well-being. You are not selfish or cruel for having needs that differ from what others want from you. Remember that healthy relationships involve mutual respect for each other's autonomy and boundaries. People who truly care about you will want you to feel free to make your own choices, even if those choices sometimes disappoint them. They will work through disagreements with respect and communication, not emotional manipulation and guilt. In our next chapter, we will explore the hot and cold pattern, a manipulation tactic where someone alternates between extreme affection and emotional distance to keep their victim confused and desperate for their attention. Chapter 7: The Hot and Cold Pattern, Why Mixed Signals Drive You Crazy. One week, Jake was the perfect boyfriend. He would text Emma constantly, take her on romantic dates, and tell her she was the love of his life. But the next week, he would become distant and cold. He would take hours to respond to her messages, cancel their plans, and act like he barely knew her when they were together. Just when Emma was ready to end the relationship, Jake would return to his loving behavior and sweep her off her feet again. This cycle repeated for 2 years, leaving Emma constantly confused about where she stood and desperately trying to figure out what she had done to cause his cold periods. This is the hot and cold pattern, a manipulation tactic where someone alternates between intense affection and emotional distance to keep their victim off balance and addicted to their attention. The manipulator gives just enough warmth to keep you hooked, then withdraws it to create anxiety and desperation. This psychological roller coaster is one of the most effective ways to maintain control over another person. The hot and cold pattern works because it exploits our brain's reward system. When someone gives us attention and affection inconsistently, our brain releases dopamine in anticipation of the next positive interaction. This creates an addiction similar to gambling, where the unpredictable rewards become more powerful than consistent ones. We become desperate to win back their affection and attention. Dr. Anna Lemke, who studies addiction and dopamine, explains that intermittent reinforcement is the most powerful way to create behavioral addiction. When rewards come at unpredictable intervals, our brain becomes hypervigilant and obsessed with getting the next hit. This is exactly what happens in hot and cold relationships, where victims become addicted to the highs and will tolerate increasingly bad treatment during the lows. The hot phase involves overwhelming displays of affection, attention, and romance. The manipulator might shower you with compliments, gifts, and promises about the future. They make you feel special, chosen, and deeply loved. This phase feels intoxicating and creates powerful emotional highs that you will chase throughout the relationship. The cold phase involves emotional withdrawal, criticism, and indifference. The manipulator becomes distant, unavailable, and sometimes cruel. They might ignore your calls and texts, cancel plans, or treat you like you are annoying them. This sudden shift is shocking and painful, especially after experiencing such intense connection. Let me tell you about Maria, whose husband Carlos would alternate between being incredibly romantic and completely dismissive. During his hot phases, Carlos would bring her flowers, write her love letters, and plan elaborate dates. He would tell her she was his soulmate and that he could not live without her. But during his cold phases, Carlos would barely acknowledge her existence. He would come home from work and ignore her, spend entire weekends playing video games without speaking to her, and act annoyed when she tried to initiate conversation or affection. Maria spent 5 years trying to figure out what triggered these phases and how to make the good times last longer. The hot and cold pattern is particularly effective because it creates trauma bonding. During the cold phases, your nervous system activates stress responses designed to reconnect with your partner. When they return to hot behavior, the relief and joy you feel creates intense emotional bonding. This cycle mimics the dynamics of Stockholm Syndrome, where victims develop strong attachments to their captors. Social media has made the hot and cold pattern easier to implement and more psychologically damaging. The manipulator can control their online presence to reinforce their hot and cold behavior. During hot phases, they might post romantic photos and loving messages about you. During cold phases, they might ignore your messages while being active online with others, or they might completely disappear from social media to increase your anxiety. Technology also allows for more subtle forms of hot and cold behavior. The manipulator might read your messages but not respond for hours or days. They might like other people's posts while ignoring yours. They might change their relationship status or remove photos of you during cold phases, then restore them during hot phases. These digital manipulations can drive victims to obsessively monitor their partner's online activity. Jennifer experienced this when her boyfriend Mark would alternate between sending her dozens of loving texts and then suddenly stopping all communication. During his hot phases, Mark would message her constantly throughout the day, send her romantic memes, and tell her how much he missed her. But during his cold phases, he would leave her messages on read for days while posting stories and commenting on other people's social media. Jennifer would spend hours analyzing his online activity, trying to understand why he was ignoring her. The psychological effects of the hot and cold pattern are severe and can last long after the relationship ends. Victims often develop anxiety disorders, depression, and attachment issues. They may become hypervigilant about their partner's moods and behavior, constantly trying to predict and prevent the next cold phase. This hypervigilance is exhausting and can affect their ability to function in other areas of life. One of the most damaging aspects of this pattern is how it makes victims blame themselves for their partner's behavior. During cold phases, victims obsessively analyze their own actions, trying to figure out what they did wrong to trigger the withdrawal. They might think they were too clingy, not interesting enough, or somehow failed to maintain their partner's interest. The hot and cold pattern also affects victims' ability to trust their own perceptions and feelings. The dramatic shifts in their partner's behavior make them question what is real and what they can expect from relationships. They may start to believe that love is supposed to be painful and unpredictable, which can damage their future relationships. Here is how to recognize the hot and cold pattern before it damages your mental health. First, pay attention to dramatic shifts in someone's behavior toward you without clear explanations. Healthy people have consistent personalities and treat you with relatively stable respect and affection. Second, notice if you find yourself constantly analyzing someone's behavior and trying to predict their moods. Third, observe whether you feel addicted to the good times in your relationship and willing to tolerate increasing amounts of bad treatment to get them back. Fourth, check if you feel like you are walking on eggshells, trying to avoid triggering another cold phase. Fifth, notice if you make excuses for someone's inconsistent behavior or blame yourself for their emotional withdrawal. If you recognize these patterns, the most important step is to stop trying to figure out what triggers the hot and cold phases. This is not about your behavior or something you can control. The manipulator is using this pattern deliberately to keep you off balance and dependent on their validation. Set clear boundaries about the treatment you will accept. You can say something like, "I need consistency in how you treat me," or "I will not accept being ignored for days," without explanation. A healthy partner will work to address these concerns. A manipulator will dismiss your needs and continue the pattern. Do not reward hot behavior after cold phases. When someone treats you badly then suddenly becomes loving again, resist the urge to be grateful and act like nothing happened. Address the cold treatment directly and require accountability before moving forward. This breaks the cycle and shows that you will not accept inconsistent treatment. Focus on building relationships with people who are emotionally stable and consistent. Surround yourself with friends and family members who treat you with steady respect and care. This helps you remember what healthy relationships feel like and makes it easier to recognize when someone is manipulating you with hot and cold behavior. Work on developing your own emotional stability and self-worth independent of any romantic relationship. The hot and cold pattern is most effective against people who depend heavily on their partner for validation and self-esteem. Building your own confidence and support system makes you less vulnerable to this manipulation. Remember that love should not feel like an addiction or emotional roller coaster. Healthy relationships involve consistent care, respect, and affection. While all relationships have ups and downs, they should not involve deliberate emotional manipulation or punishment. You deserve to be with someone who makes you feel secure and valued consistently. In our next chapter, we will explore the information diet, a manipulation tactic where someone controls what information you have access to in order to shape your reality and keep you dependent on their version of truth. Chapter 8. The Information Diet, How They Starve You of Truth. Karen thought her friends had abandoned her. For months, her husband Tom would tell her that no one had called while she was at work. Her family seemed distant, and when she asked Tom if anyone had reached out, he would sigh and say that people were probably just busy with their own lives. Karen felt increasingly isolated and began to believe that maybe she was not as important to people as she had thought. What Karen did not know was that Tom had been intercepting every phone call, deleting her text messages, and telling her friends and family that Karen was going through a difficult time and did not want to be disturbed. He had systematically cut off her access to the outside world while making her believe that the world had abandoned her. This is the information diet, a psychological manipulation tactic where someone controls, filters, or completely blocks your access to information about your own life and the world around you. The information controller becomes the sole gatekeeper of truth, deciding what you should know, when you should know it, and how you should interpret it. This creates a distorted reality bubble that keeps you dependent, confused, and unable to make informed decisions. The information diet works because human beings need accurate information to function and make good decisions. When someone controls your information flow, they effectively control your ability to understand reality and respond appropriately to situations. You become like a driver navigating with broken GPS, constantly getting lost because the information you are receiving does not match the actual terrain. Dr. Stephen Hassan, who studies thought reform, explains that information control is one of the most powerful weapons in a manipulator's arsenal. When people cannot access diverse sources of information, they lose their ability to think critically and become completely dependent on their controller for their understanding of reality. The modern information diet takes many sophisticated forms. Digital manipulation involves someone taking control of your electronic communications without your knowledge. They might secretly read your emails, monitor your text messages, control your social media accounts, or track your internet browsing. They present this as concern for your safety or helping you stay organized, but they are actually building an invisible fence around your mind. Let me tell you about Michael, whose girlfriend Jessica gradually gained access to every aspect of his digital life. It started when Jessica offered to help Michael organize his emails because he seemed stressed. She set up folders and filters, even offering to respond to some messages on his behalf. What Michael did not realize was that Jessica was also forwarding copies of important emails to her own account and deleting messages she did not want him to see. When Michael wondered why certain people seemed to be avoiding him, Jessica would provide explanations that made her seem like his only reliable ally. Physical information control involves someone positioning themselves as the filter for all communications coming into your life. They might insist on answering your phone calls, checking your mail first, or being present during all your conversations with friends and family. They create the illusion that they are being helpful while actually controlling every piece of information that reaches you. Financial information control happens when someone restricts your access to information about your own money and financial situation. They might handle all the banking, hide bills and statements, or provide false information about your financial status. This keeps you dependent and unaware of your true options for independence. The psychological impact of information control is devastating because it attacks your fundamental ability to understand and navigate reality. When you cannot access accurate information about your own life, you begin to doubt your memory, your judgment, and your ability to function independently. You become increasingly dependent on your controller for basic understanding of what is happening around you. One of the most cruel aspects of the information diet is how it makes victims feel abandoned and unloved by people who are actually trying to reach them. When friends and family cannot get through because their communications are being blocked, victims often conclude that people do not care about them anymore. This increases their emotional dependence on the manipulator. Technology has made information control more comprehensive and harder to detect than ever before. Controllers can use shared devices, family plans, and connected accounts to monitor all digital activity. They might install tracking software, use parental controls inappropriately, or simply change passwords to accounts that should be private. Here is how to recognize when you are being put on an information diet. First, notice if you consistently feel out of the loop about important events or decisions that affect your life. If you often learn about things secondhand or after they have already happened, someone might be controlling your information flow. Second, pay attention to whether one person seems to be the source of most information in your life. If someone always knows what is happening before you do, or if they consistently provide explanations for why others have not contacted you, this could be a sign of information control. Third, observe whether you have lost touch with people who used to be regular parts of your life. If friends and family seem to have become distant without any clear reason, someone might be interfering with your communications. If you suspect information control, start documenting what you observe using methods the controller cannot access. Create private email accounts they do not know about, use public computers to research your situation, or keep written records in a secure location outside your home. Test your suspicions by asking trusted friends and family members directly whether they have tried to contact you. Reach out to people using methods that bypass your usual communication channels. You might be surprised to discover that people have been trying to reach you all along. Create backup communication methods that the controller cannot monitor or block. Get your own cell phone plan, set up private email accounts, and establish direct relationships with banks, doctors, employers, and other important contacts. Make sure you have your own passwords and access to all accounts that affect your life. Verify important information independently using multiple sources. Do not rely on one person's interpretation of events or their claims about what others have said. Fact-check important information using official sources, and cross-reference what you are told with what you can observe directly. Be extremely suspicious of anyone who claims they are protecting you by controlling your access to information. Healthy people want their loved ones to be well-informed and capable of making their own decisions. They do not try to filter or restrict access to information about your own life. The recovery from information control involves rebuilding your confidence in your own ability to gather, process, and understand information. Many victims lose faith in their judgment and become afraid to trust their own perceptions. Working with a counselor can help you develop healthy information processing habits and learn to trust yourself again. Remember that access to truth and information about your own life is a basic human right in healthy relationships. People who genuinely care about you will encourage you to stay informed, ask questions, and make decisions based on complete and accurate information. They will not try to become the sole filter through which you understand your own reality. In our next chapter, we will explore projection, a manipulation tactic where someone deflects responsibility for their own behavior by accusing you of the very things they are guilty of doing themselves. Chapter 9. The Projection Defense, How They Make Their Problems Yours. Every time Amanda caught her boyfriend Chris in a lie, he would accuse her of being dishonest. When she found evidence that he was cheating, Chris would claim that Amanda was the one having affairs and demand to search through her phone. When friends told Amanda they were concerned about Chris's drinking problem, he would insist that Amanda was an alcoholic who needed help. Chris would become so angry and convincing during these accusations that Amanda started questioning her own behavior and wondering if she was the real problem in their relationship. This is projection, a psychological defense mechanism that manipulators use to avoid taking responsibility for their own behavior by accusing others of the same problems. The projector takes their own negative traits, behaviors, or emotions and claims that someone else is displaying them instead. This deflects attention from their own issues while making their victim feel confused, defensive, and responsible for problems they did not create. Projection works because it catches victims off guard and triggers their natural impulse to defend themselves. When someone accuses you of behavior you know you are not guilty of, your first instinct is to prove your innocence. This shifts the focus away from the original problem and puts you in a defensive position. While you are busy defending yourself, the real issue gets forgotten or minimized. Dr. George Simon, who studies manipulative behavior, explains that projection serves multiple purposes for manipulators. It helps them avoid feelings of shame and guilt about their own behavior. It confuses their victims and makes them question their own perceptions. It also deflects attention away from the manipulator's problems and puts the focus on defending against false accusations. The psychology behind projection is rooted in the inability to tolerate negative feelings about oneself. Instead of facing their own flaws and working to improve them, projectors externalize these problems onto other people. This allows them to maintain their self-image while avoiding the difficult work of personal growth and accountability. Projection often involves accusing others of the exact behaviors the manipulator is engaging in. A person who lies constantly will accuse others of being dishonest. Someone who is having an affair will become obsessed with their partner's faithfulness. A person with anger issues will claim that everyone else has a temper problem. Let me tell you about Michael, whose wife Janet would accuse him of being lazy and irresponsible whenever he brought up concerns about her spending habits. Janet would spend thousands of dollars on shopping sprees and hide the purchases from Michael. When Michael discovered the debt and tried to discuss their financial problems, Janet would explode with anger and accuse him of being financially irresponsible. She would bring up every small purchase Michael had made and claim that he was the reason they had money problems. Michael would end up apologizing and promising to be more careful with money, while Janet's spending problem was never addressed. Emotional projection involves accusing others of having the feelings or reactions that the projector is actually experiencing. Someone who is angry might accuse others of being hostile or aggressive. A person who is insecure might claim that others are jealous or envious. Someone who is manipulative might accuse others of trying to control them. Behavioral projection involves accusing others of actions or patterns that the projector exhibits. A person who is consistently late might accuse others of poor time management. Someone who breaks promises might claim that others are unreliable. A person who gossips might accuse others of spreading rumors. Character projection involves attacking someone's personality or moral character with traits that actually describe the projector. Someone who is selfish might accuse others of only caring about themselves. A person who is dishonest might claim that others cannot be trusted. Someone who is manipulative might accuse others of being calculating or fake. The confusion created by projection is intentional and strategic. The manipulator wants you to focus on defending yourself instead of holding them accountable for their behavior. They know that most people will become distracted by false accusations and forget about the original issue that needed to be addressed. Social media and technology have created new platforms for projection. Manipulators might post vague messages about being betrayed or mistreated, designed to make their victims feel guilty or confused. They might accuse others of social media stalking while obsessively monitoring their victims' online activity. They could claim others are addicted to their phones while spending hours scrolling and posting themselves. Digital projection also includes accusing others of online behaviors that the projector engages in. Someone who creates fake accounts might accuse others of catfishing. A person who shares private information online might claim that others violate their privacy. Someone who posts attention-seeking content might accuse others of being dramatic or seeking validation. Lisa experienced this when her ex-boyfriend Mark accused her of harassing him online after their breakup. Mark would create fake social media accounts to monitor Lisa's activity and send her anonymous messages. When Lisa blocked his accounts and asked him to stop contacting her, Mark would claim that she was the one stalking and harassing him. He would show mutual friends screenshots of his own messages to Lisa, claiming they were evidence of her harassment. The psychological impact of projection on victims is severe and lasting. Constant false accusations make victims question their own behavior and moral character. They may start to believe that they actually have the problems they are being accused of, especially when the accusations are repeated consistently over time. Victims of projection often develop hypervigilance about their own behavior. They become obsessed with monitoring themselves to make sure they are not displaying the negative traits they are being accused of. This self-monitoring is exhausting and takes energy away from recognizing the real problems in their relationship. One of the most damaging aspects of projection is how it prevents resolution of actual problems. Instead of addressing the manipulator's behavior, discussions get derailed into defending against false accusations. The real issues never get resolved because the focus constantly shifts to proving innocence rather than solving problems. Here is how to recognize projection before it confuses and controls you. First, notice if someone consistently accuses you of behaviors that you know you do not engage in, especially if these accusations seem to describe their own behavior more accurately. Second, pay attention to whether discussions about their behavior always get turned around to focus on your supposed problems. Third, observe if someone becomes extremely defensive and accusatory when you try to address legitimate concerns about their behavior. Healthy people can discuss their mistakes and work on improving. Projectors cannot tolerate criticism and immediately deflect by attacking others. Fourth, watch for patterns where someone's accusations seem to come out of nowhere or do not match your actual behavior. If someone who never spends money accuses you of being financially irresponsible, or someone who lies constantly claims you are dishonest, you are likely dealing with projection. When someone projects onto you, resist the urge to defend yourself against their false accusations. This is exactly what they want you to do. Instead, stay focused on the original issue that needed to be addressed. You can say something like, "I am not going to defend myself against false accusations. Let us talk about the real problem here." Set clear boundaries about how you will engage with projection. You might say, "I will not participate in conversations where you accuse me of your own behavior, or we can discuss this when you are ready to take responsibility for your actions instead of blaming me." Document patterns of projection to help you stay grounded in reality. Keep a private record of when someone projects onto you and what they are accusing you of. This helps you see the patterns clearly and resist gaslighting about your own behavior. Use the projection as information about what the manipulator is actually doing. If someone constantly accuses you of lying, they are probably dishonest themselves. If they claim you are trying to control them, they are likely the controlling one in the relationship. This reverse psychology can help you understand what is really happening. Do not try to point out to the projector that they are describing their own behavior. This will only make them more defensive and escalate their projection. Focus on protecting yourself and maintaining your boundaries rather than trying to make them see their own behavior clearly. Build a support system of people who know you well and can reality check the accusations being made against you. Projectors often isolate their victims and make them doubt their own character. Having trusted friends or family members who can confirm your actual behavior helps you stay grounded in truth. Work on developing strong self-awareness and confidence in your own character. Projection is most effective against people who already doubt themselves or have low self-esteem. Knowing your own values, strengths, and areas for improvement makes you less vulnerable to false accusations. Remember that projection says everything about the person doing it and nothing about you. People who consistently project their problems onto others are showing you their own character flaws and emotional immaturity. You are not responsible for fixing their self-awareness or helping them see their own behavior clearly. The recovery from being targeted by projection involves rebuilding trust in your own perceptions and moral character. Many victims internalize the false accusations and start to believe negative things about themselves. Working with a therapist can help you separate truth from manipulation and restore confidence in your own judgment. Healthy relationships involve people who can take responsibility for their own behavior and work on their problems without blaming others. People who truly care about you will address conflicts directly and honestly, not deflect their issues onto you through false accusations. In our next chapter, we will explore the isolation protocol, a systematic method that manipulators use to cut their victims off from support systems and outside perspectives that could help them recognize and escape the manipulation. Chapter 10. The Isolation Protocol, How They Cut You Off from Support. When Jennifer first started dating Ryan, she had a close group of friends and a strong relationship with her family. But Ryan always seemed to have problems with the people in her life. Her best friend Sarah was obviously jealous of their relationship. Her sister was trying to interfere in their happiness. Her coworkers were bad influences who did not understand true love. Slowly, Ryan convinced Jennifer to spend less time with these people and more time with him. When her friends stopped calling and her family became distant, Ryan would comfort Jennifer and remind her that she only needed him anyway. By the end of their 2-year relationship, Jennifer realized she had no one left to turn to except the person who was causing her pain. This is the isolation protocol, a systematic manipulation tactic where someone gradually cuts their victim off from sources of support, outside perspectives, and potential help. The isolator wants their victim to become completely dependent on them for social connection, emotional support, and validation. This makes it much harder for the victim to recognize abuse, get help, or leave the relationship. Isolation works because humans are social creatures who need connection with multiple people to maintain psychological health and perspective. When someone becomes your only source of social interaction, they gain enormous power over your thoughts, feelings, and behavior. You lose the ability to reality check your experiences or get support when problems arise. The isolation protocol typically happens gradually over months or years. The manipulator does not immediately demand that you cut off all contact with others. Instead, they create problems and drama around your other relationships until you voluntarily start spending less time with friends and family to avoid conflict. Dr. Judith Lewis Herman, who studies psychological trauma, explains that isolation is one of the most powerful tools of psychological control. When victims are cut off from outside support and perspective, they become completely dependent on their abuser for their sense of reality. This makes them vulnerable to gaslighting, manipulation, and accepting treatment they would never tolerate if they had other people to turn to. The isolator uses several specific strategies to separate you from your support system. Character assassination involves consistently criticizing and finding fault with the important people in your life. They might claim your friends are jealous, your family is dysfunctional, or your coworkers are bad influences. They plant seeds of doubt about people who care about you. Let me tell you about Marcus, whose girlfriend Emma systematically destroyed his relationships with his friends. Emma would find something wrong with each person in Marcus's social circle. His best friend Jake was immature and irresponsible. His college roommate was still stuck in the past. His workout buddy was only using him for rides to the gym. Emma would create scenarios where she needed Marcus during times when he had plans with friends, then act hurt when he chose his friends over her needs. Eventually, Marcus stopped making plans with friends to avoid the drama and guilt. Time monopolization is another isolation strategy where the manipulator demands increasing amounts of your time and attention. They might want to spend every weekend together, call you constantly throughout the day, or create crises that require your immediate attention when you have plans with others. They make it practically impossible to maintain other relationships. Geographic isolation involves moving you away from your support system or restricting your ability to travel and visit others. The manipulator might suggest moving to a new city for work or school, then use the distance to justify why you cannot maintain your previous relationships. They might also control transportation, money, or other resources that would allow you to visit friends and family. Financial isolation involves making you financially dependent so you cannot afford to maintain social relationships or get help if needed. The manipulator might encourage you to quit your job, handle all the finances themselves, or create debt that makes it impossible for you to pay for social activities or travel to see loved ones. Technology isolation includes monitoring and controlling your digital communications with others. The manipulator might read your texts and emails, control your social media accounts, or limit your access to phones and internet. They want to filter and control all information coming in and going out of your life. The psychological effects of isolation are severe and can last long after the relationship ends. Victims often lose social skills and confidence in their ability to form and maintain relationships. They may feel ashamed about how they allowed themselves to become isolated and worrying that their friends and family will not forgive them. Social media has created new forms of isolation that are harder to recognize. Digital isolation might involve controlling your online presence, monitoring your social media activity, or creating drama with people you interact with online. The manipulator might also use social media to spread false information about you to damage your relationships with others. Sarah experienced this when her boyfriend Tom created fake social media accounts to monitor her online activity and start conflicts with her friends. Tom would screenshot private conversations Sarah had with friends and then confront her about things she had shared. He would also comment on her friends' posts with controversial or rude statements, causing them to blame Sarah and distance themselves from her. Here is how to recognize when someone is trying to isolate you. First, notice if someone consistently finds fault with the important people in your life and pressures you to spend less time with them. Second, pay attention to whether you find yourself making excuses to friends and family for why you cannot see them as often. Third, observe if someone creates emergencies or needs attention whenever you have plans with others. Fourth, check whether you have lost touch with friends and family members who used to be important to you. Fifth, notice if you feel like you cannot talk to anyone about problems in your relationship, because you do not have people you feel comfortable confiding in. If you recognize signs of isolation, the most important step is to actively work to maintain and rebuild your relationships with others. Reach out to friends and family members, even if it has been a long time since you spoke. Most people who truly care about you will be understanding and happy to reconnect. Set boundaries about your time and social relationships. You can say something like, "I need to maintain my friendships and family relationships, or I will not accept criticism of the people I care about." A healthy partner will respect your need for other relationships. An isolator will fight these boundaries and try to make you feel guilty for wanting connections with others. Create opportunities for your partner to get to know your friends and family in positive ways. Sometimes isolation happens because of misunderstandings or personality conflicts that can be resolved. However, if your partner consistently refuses to make an effort or continues to find fault with everyone in your life, this is a red flag for intentional isolation. Build financial and practical independence so that you can maintain relationships even if your partner disapproves. Have your own money for social activities, your own transportation, and your own communication devices. This prevents practical barriers from being used to isolate you. Trust your instincts if people you care about express concerns about your relationship. Isolated victims often dismiss warnings from friends and family as jealousy or misunderstanding. But people who know you well can often see problems that you cannot recognize when you are in the middle of them. Document patterns of isolation attempts so you can see them clearly. Keep a private record of times when your partner criticizes your relationships or creates conflicts when you spend time with others. This helps you recognize the manipulation and resist gaslighting about your social needs. Remember that healthy relationships enhance your connections with others rather than replacing them. People who truly love you will want you to have strong friendships and family relationships. They will encourage these connections and make an effort to be part of your broader social world. The recovery from isolation involves gradually rebuilding your social skills and confidence in relationships. Many victims feel awkward or anxious about reconnecting with people after being isolated. Be patient with yourself and remember that good friends and family members will be understanding about what you have been through. In our next chapter, we will learn how to spot all these manipulation tactics in real time, giving you the tools to recognize and respond to psychological manipulation as it happens rather than realizing it months or years later. Chapter 11, The Mind Reading Test, How to Spot These Tactics in Real Time. Alex thought he was going crazy during his first date with Maya. Within the first hour, she had accused him of not listening when he was paying complete attention. She claimed he was checking out other women when he was looking at the menu. When Alex politely disagreed with her opinion about a movie, Maya said he was trying to make her feel stupid and that he obviously thought he was better than her. By the end of the evening, Alex was exhausted from defending himself against accusations that made no sense. What Alex did not realize was that Maya was testing his boundaries and seeing how much manipulation he would accept. This was her way of identifying whether he would be a good target for psychological control. This is what I call the mind reading test, a manipulation tactic where someone claims to know what you are thinking, feeling, or intending, then attacks you based on these false assumptions. The manipulator presents their interpretations of your behavior as facts, then makes you defend yourself against accusations that have no basis in reality. This technique serves multiple purposes. It tests your boundaries, makes you feel defensive and confused, and establishes the manipulator as an authority on your own thoughts and feelings. The mind reading test works because most people have a natural impulse to defend themselves when accused of something, even if the accusation is completely false. The manipulator knows this and uses your defensive responses to gather information about your personality, your boundaries, and how much manipulation you will tolerate before pushing back. Dr. George Simon, who studies manipulative behavior, explains that skilled manipulators are constantly gathering intelligence about their targets. They want to know how you respond to different types of pressure, what triggers your guilt or shame, and how much psychological abuse you will accept before fighting back. The mind reading test gives them this information very quickly. The mind reading test often happens early in relationships, when the manipulator is still evaluating whether you will be a suitable victim. They will make false claims about your thoughts and motivations to see how you respond. If you become defensive and try to prove their assumptions wrong, they learn that you can be manipulated through false accusations. If you calmly reject their assumptions and maintain your boundaries, they often move on to easier targets. Let me tell you about Jessica, who experienced the mind-reading test during her first few weeks working at a new company. Her supervisor Linda would constantly make assumptions about Jessica's thoughts and intentions. When Jessica asked questions about procedures, Linda would say, "I can tell you think our methods are stupid." When Jessica worked late, Linda would claim, "You are obviously trying to make the rest of us look bad." When Jessica brought lunch from home, Linda would say, "You must think you are too good to eat with the team." Jessica spent weeks trying to prove these assumptions wrong before realizing that Linda was testing her boundaries and looking for ways to control her. Mind-reading manipulators use several specific phrases and techniques to make their false assumptions seem credible. They might say things like, "I know what you are really thinking, it is obvious that you feel," or "you obviously believe." They present their interpretations as facts rather than opinions, which makes it harder for victims to challenge them directly. Another common technique is projecting negative motivations onto innocent behaviors. If you are quiet during a conversation, they might claim you are being passive-aggressive or judgmental. If you ask questions, they might say you are trying to make them look stupid. If you disagree with them, they might claim you are trying to control or manipulate them. The emotional impact of the mind-reading test is significant because it attacks your sense of self and autonomy. When someone constantly tells you what you are thinking and feeling, you start to doubt your own inner experience. You might begin to wonder if you really are having the thoughts and feelings they claim you have, especially if they seem very confident about their interpretations. Technology and social media have created new platforms for mind-reading manipulation. Someone might interpret your social media activity, response times to messages, or online behavior and claim to know what these things mean about your thoughts and feelings. They might say things like, "I can tell you are mad at me because you did not like my post," or "You obviously do not care about me because you took 3 hours to respond to my text." Digital mind reading also includes making assumptions about your relationships with other people based on online interactions. The manipulator might see you comment on someone's photo and claim, "I know you have feelings for that person," or notice you following a new account and say, "You obviously think they are more interesting than me." Here is how to recognize the mind-reading test when it happens to you. First, notice when someone makes definitive statements about your thoughts, feelings, or motivations that are not accurate. Pay attention to phrases like, "I know you think," "You obviously feel," or "It is clear that you believe," followed by something that does not match your actual inner experience. Second, observe whether someone consistently interprets your neutral or positive behaviors in negative ways. If someone regularly finds sinister motivations in innocent actions, they are likely mind-reading to create conflict and test your boundaries. Third, watch for patterns where someone claims to understand your intentions better than you do. Healthy people might guess or ask about your thoughts and feelings, but they do not insist they know better than you what is going on in your own mind. When someone tries to mind-read you, the most effective response is to calmly and clearly reject their assumptions. You can say something like, "That is not what I was thinking, you are wrong about my motivations," or "I will tell you how I feel," rather than having you guess. Do not feel obligated to prove their assumptions wrong or provide detailed explanations of your actual thoughts. Avoid getting defensive or trying to convince the mind reader that their interpretation is incorrect. This gives them the reaction they are looking for and encourages more mind-reading behavior. Instead, simply state the truth and move on. You might say, "I disagree with your interpretation," and then change the subject or end the conversation. Set clear boundaries about how you will communicate about thoughts and feelings. You can say something like, "If you want to know what I am thinking, ask me directly rather than making assumptions, or I will not defend myself against false accusations about my motivations." Trust your own inner experience over someone else's interpretations. You are the only person who truly knows what you are thinking and feeling. Do not let someone else convince you that they understand your mind better than you do, no matter how confident they seem about their assumptions. Document patterns of mind-reading behavior to help you recognize the manipulation clearly. Keep a private record of times when someone makes false assumptions about your thoughts and feelings. This helps you see the pattern and resist gaslighting about your own mental experience. Use the mind-reading test as valuable information about the person doing it. People who consistently claim to know what others are thinking are usually projecting their own thought patterns onto you. They are telling you more about how their mind works than they are revealing anything accurate about yours. Build confidence in your own self-awareness and emotional intelligence. The mind-reading test is most effective against people who doubt their own thoughts and feelings. Developing a strong sense of your own inner experience makes you less vulnerable to someone else's false interpretations. Remember that healthy communication involves asking questions and making requests rather than making assumptions. People who respect you will say things like, "How are you feeling about this?" or "What are you thinking?" rather than telling you what you think and feel. The ability to spot mind reading in real time is crucial for protecting yourself from other manipulation tactics. Many of the techniques we have discussed involve the manipulator claiming to understand your thoughts, feelings, or motivations better than you do. Recognizing and rejecting these false assumptions is your first line of defense against psychological manipulation. Practice responding to mind-reading attempts with calm confidence. The more you practice rejecting false assumptions about your inner experience, the easier it becomes to maintain your boundaries and sense of self when dealing with manipulative people. In our final chapter, we will put together everything you have learned into a comprehensive defense system that will protect you from all forms of psychological manipulation and help you build healthier, more authentic relationships. Chapter 12, The Liberation Blueprint, Your Complete Defense System. 3 years ago, Rebecca was trapped in a psychological prison she could not even see. Her boyfriend used every manipulation tactic we have covered in this series. He gaslighted her daily reality, love-bombed her into addiction, punished her with silent treatment, triangulated her with other women, made empty promises about their future, emotionally blackmailed her with guilt and threats, kept her spinning with hot and cold behavior, controlled all her information sources, projected his problems onto her, and systematically cut her off from everyone who cared about her. When Rebecca finally escaped, she felt broken, confused, and terrified of trusting anyone again. But today, Rebecca has rebuilt her life using the exact defense system you are about to learn. She now helps other survivors recognize manipulation, and she can spot these tactics within minutes of meeting someone. Most importantly, she is in a healthy relationship with someone who respects and cherishes her authentic self. This is your liberation blueprint, a complete defense system that will protect you from all forms of psychological manipulation and help you build the genuine, healthy relationships you deserve. Everything you have learned in this series comes together into a practical shield that you can use immediately to recognize, resist, and recover from manipulation attempts. The foundation of your defense system is what I call reality ownership. This means becoming the ultimate authority on your own thoughts, feelings, experiences, and perceptions. When you own your reality completely, it becomes impossible for others to manipulate your understanding of what is true and what is false. Reality ownership starts with developing unshakable self-awareness. You must know yourself so well that when someone tries to tell you what you think, feel, or want, you immediately recognize the lie. This means paying attention to your emotional responses, understanding your values and boundaries, and trusting your instincts even when others try to convince you that you are wrong. Dr. Maya Angelou once said that when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Your reality ownership system allows you to see people clearly from the beginning, before you become emotionally invested and vulnerable to their manipulation tactics. The first pillar of your defense system is instant pattern recognition. You now know the 11 manipulation tactics that controllers use to dominate their victims. Your job is to develop an automatic response system that detects these patterns the moment they appear. When someone love bombs you with excessive attention and affection very early in a relationship, your pattern recognition system should immediately activate. When someone gives you the silent treatment to punish you for setting boundaries, you should recognize this as emotional abuse, not a relationship problem to solve. When someone triangulates you with third parties to create jealousy and competition, you should see this as deliberate manipulation, not evidence that you need to try harder. Let me tell you about Marcus, who used pattern recognition to escape a toxic workplace situation before it destroyed his career. His new manager started using several manipulation tactics within the first month. She would gaslight him about conversations they had, triangulate him with other employees by sharing confidential information, and emotionally blackmail him by claiming his work performance was affecting her health. Because Marcus recognized these patterns from his previous toxic relationship, he was able to document the behavior, seek support from human resources, and ultimately transfer to a different department before the manipulation escalated. The second pillar is boundary fortification. This means establishing non-negotiable limits about how you will and will not be treated, then enforcing these boundaries consistently regardless of how others react. Manipulators are like water seeking the path of least resistance. They will test every boundary to find your weak spots and exploit them. Your boundaries must include the right to your own thoughts and feelings without someone else interpreting them for you. The right to say no without extensive justification or guilt trips. The right to end conversations that become disrespectful or manipulative. The right to maintain relationships with friends and family without interference. The right to access information about your own life, finances, and important decisions. When someone violates your boundaries, your response must be immediate and consistent. You do not negotiate with boundary violations or give second chances to people who show you they do not respect your limits. You enforce consequences every single time, even when it feels uncomfortable or creates conflict. The third pillar is emotional armor. This means developing the ability to regulate your own emotions so that manipulators cannot use your feelings as weapons against you. Every manipulation tactic we have discussed works by triggering specific emotions like fear, guilt, anger, jealousy, or desperation that cloud your judgment and make you vulnerable to control. Emotional armor involves recognizing when someone is trying to manipulate your emotions and choosing your response consciously rather than reacting automatically. When someone tries to make you feel guilty for having boundaries, you recognize this as emotional blackmail and respond with calm firmness instead of giving into the guilt. When someone tries to make you jealous through triangulation, you see this as manipulation and remove yourself from the situation instead of competing for their attention. Building emotional armor requires practice and self-discipline. You must learn to pause before responding to emotional triggers, identify what emotion someone is trying to create in you, and ask yourself what response would be in your best interest rather than what would make the other person happy. The fourth pillar is information independence. This means maintaining direct access to all important information about your life and relationships without relying on any single person as your information source. You must have your own bank accounts, your own communication devices, your own relationships with medical providers, legal advisors, and other important contacts. Information independence also means fact-checking important claims using multiple sources, maintaining private documentation of important conversations and events, and staying connected with diverse people who can provide different perspectives on situations. You never allow one person to become your only source of truth about anything important. The fifth pillar is support network diversification. This means building and maintaining relationships with multiple people who support your well-being and can provide reality checks when you are dealing with potential manipulation. Manipulators work hard to isolate their victims because outside perspectives threaten their control. Your support network should include friends who have known you for years and can remind you of who you really are when someone tries to change your self-perception. Family members who have your best interests at heart and will be honest with you about their concerns. Professional supporters like therapists, coaches, or counselors who can provide objective guidance. Community connections through work, hobbies, or volunteer activities that give you purpose and belonging outside of romantic relationships. The sixth pillar is strategic communication. This means learning to communicate in ways that protect you from manipulation while building genuine connections with healthy people. Strategic communication involves asking direct questions instead of accepting vague answers, requesting specific commitments instead of accepting empty promises, and calling out manipulation tactics directly instead of getting defensive or trying to prove your innocence. When someone gaslights you, you say I disagree with your version of events and refuse to argue about what really happened. When someone tries to future fake you, you ask for specific timelines and concrete steps they will take to fulfill their promises. When someone projects their problems onto you, you say I will not defend myself against false accusations and redirect the conversation to their actual behavior. Sarah learned strategic communication after escaping a marriage where her husband used every manipulation tactic to control her. In her new relationship, Sarah communicates her needs directly, asks for clarification when something feels unclear, and addresses problems immediately instead of hoping they will resolve themselves. Her new partner respects this direct communication style and responds with equal honesty and transparency. The seventh pillar is recovery protocols. This means having a specific plan for how you will heal and rebuild if you discover that you have been manipulated or if you need to escape a toxic situation. Recovery protocols include knowing where you can go for immediate safety, having access to financial resources that are not controlled by the manipulator, maintaining connections with people who can provide practical and emotional support, and understanding the steps you need to take to rebuild your life. Recovery protocols also include self-compassion practices that help you process the shame and self-blame that often come with recognizing that you have been manipulated. You must understand that manipulation is designed to be invisible and that even intelligent, strong people can become victims when exposed to skilled psychological manipulation. The eighth pillar is relationship testing. This means systematically evaluating new relationships to determine whether someone is genuine or manipulative before you become emotionally invested. Relationship testing involves observing how people respond when you set boundaries, how they treat service workers and other people who cannot benefit them, whether their actions match their words over time, and how they handle disagreements and conflicts. You test potential partners by saying no to reasonable requests and seeing how they respond. Healthy people respect your boundaries even when they are disappointed. Manipulators will argue, guilt trip, or punish you for having limits. You observe whether someone treats you consistently well or whether their behavior changes dramatically based on what they want from you. The ninth pillar is intuition amplification. This means learning to trust and act on your instincts even when you cannot logically explain why something feels wrong. Your subconscious mind processes thousands of microsignals that your conscious mind might miss. When something feels off about a person or situation, there is usually a good reason for that feeling. Intuition amplification involves paying attention to physical sensations like tension, anxiety, or discomfort when you are around certain people. Noticing when you feel drained, confused, or anxious after spending time with someone. Trusting your gut feelings about people even when they seem charming or when others think highly of them. The 10th and final pillar is authentic relationship building. This means actively seeking and nurturing relationships with people who value your authentic self and who demonstrate consistent respect, honesty, and emotional maturity. Authentic relationships are characterized by mutual respect for each other's autonomy, honest communication about problems and conflicts, consistent behavior that matches stated values, support for each other's individual growth and goals, and the ability to disagree without attacking each other's character. When you have experienced authentic love and respect, it becomes much easier to recognize when someone is trying to manipulate you. Healthy relationships feel peaceful and energizing rather than chaotic and draining. They enhance your sense of self rather than making you question who you are. Remember that building your liberation blueprint is a process, not a destination. You will continue to refine and strengthen these skills throughout your life. Some days will be easier than others, and you may occasionally find yourself questioning your judgment or falling into old patterns. This is normal and part of the growth process. The goal is not to become cynical or distrustful of all people. The goal is to become so confident in your own worth and so skilled at recognizing authentic love that you naturally attract healthy relationships while automatically repelling manipulative people. Your journey towards psychological freedom begins now. You have the knowledge, the tools, and the blueprint needed to protect yourself from manipulation and build the genuine, loving relationships you deserve. Trust yourself, maintain your boundaries, stay connected with people who support your well-being, and never settle for relationships that make you feel small, confused, or controlled. You are worthy of love that feels safe, consistent, and authentic. You deserve relationships that celebrate who you are rather than trying to change you into someone else. Your liberation blueprint will guide you toward these relationships and protect you from those who would try to manipulate your beautiful, authentic self.